Okay, this is a video that just simply needs to be made. Hasbro will never, ever, ever, ever give us a definitive Episode 3 Anakin with the correct coloring, paint applications, and decent plastic. It won't happen. And I have finally accepted that after ordering this piece of crap. But a little bit of context and nuance, because Revenge of the Sith came out 20 years ago. 20 years ago. And they had a toy line. This is a customized version of the basic Revenge of the Sith toy line Anakin. So what I did was simply added an improved head and fixed up the glove a little bit, But if you notice the coloring, the boots, the trunks, the tabs, the belt placement, that's pretty correct. Now, this purplish brown is a little over the top, but if you look at the middle where the torso is, you have a nice brown, and then inside the neck you have another colored brown. So as far as the coloring, it's way good, but obviously the joints are and the rest of it looks 2005. It's even got an action swivel. So in that weight, in that time frame, let me just put this back here. All of us were crying out, please give us a definitive, at least a better Anakin. Here comes the 3-pack evolution set. Now, what's so beautiful about this figure is that its sculpt was used for years, and actually is pretty much the archetypical sculpt for all Episode 3 Anakins, including the Vintage Collection Anakin, which you'll see here. But what makes this release so wonderful is its incorporation of, the first kind of super articulated detail. So I'm going to tell you what this gets right and what this gets wrong. The boots, the color of the boots are correct. If you look at the color of the trunks, the pants, they're correct. But you have an incorrect light-colored skirt, which doesn't match with his darker colored look. Plus, you have a much lighter brown than what's actually in the movie. Now, the glove, that's perfectly accurate. The color of the glove is perfectly accurate. And unfortunately, while it is a totally improved figure, and you can even see the brown in here, it's limited by its 2005 standards, which the swivel elbows and, at the time, this was like cutting edge innovation in terms of action figures. This is still a great action figure, but again, you have a much lighter tablature or whatever they call it, tunic, and it's not congruent with his look in Episode 3. It's just not quite there, and you can do customizing, but at your own peril. So that was 2005. So 3 years later, they were advertised in the 30th anniversary collection this figure, appropriately titled Darth Vader, since it was a kind of a reissue, but this time it came with, the difference was it was a new paint and came with hip articulation. However, they didn't correct the paint, and if you look, The brown isn't quite correct, but what's worse is that they got lazy, and the glove now is completely brown. As you'll see here, it's just completely one color, and it's brown going all the way down there. However, this, in all honesty, all sincerity, is the closest figure that Hasbro has ever gotten to an appropriate color scheme and match for the episode 3 look. Now, the problem is the boots are perfect, the pants are perfect. You could, based on who you ask, the dark under tunic is correct. You have that inconsistent brown, and you have these like tablatures that that are part of his tunic that come down, that are just, I don't know what the hell they were thinking. Just match this up with this color and match this up and put it on there, and then you've got a really decent Anakin, and the only thing you're really missing is your elbow joints. Because if you look closely, it's a much better paint job and a much more detailed, upgraded facial sculpt. So if you look at the browns here, let me get it back in the frame. If you look at the browns, you got a one color brown, and then you got kind of a different colored brown here, which actually matches more up with his episode 3 look than any others. So for years, I was using this Anakin as, my proper Anakin. The only difference was I took the since this is an identical sculpt pretty much to the Evolution sculpt, I simply took the black Evolution's arm, put it right on there, and it looks as good as it can be. I still was disappointed in these tablatures, because obviously they're much darker in the movie. But as far as totality, they for 2008 standards, 2007 standards, this was a great leap forward. This was great, and this was another great leap forward. Unfortunately, now we get to the vintage collection and this utter bulbous monstrosity. Okay, first things first. Look at the boots, and then look at the pants. This is the vintage collection, mind you. This is like the most accurate, supposedly the best of the best in the 3.75 inch scale. That's a completely incorrect coloring of his pants. The boots, you could say, are fine, but that's not really a great consolation. The tablature here, those part of the costume, when it still comes down, they still kept the same color as that. However, if you look at the brown tunic, it's all the same color, and it's incorrect. This should be much, much darker. The entire thing should be darker. But what really stands out and what really kills this figure for me is this atrocious head sculpt that doesn't look like Anakin, and this additional hair piece that looks awful, and then arms that literally are disproportionate to the rest of his body. It looks awful. And this is supposed to be the most accurate version of it. Okay, so this is the 2010. All right, so we're 5 years. Okay, this was released 2010, 2011. So we're 5-6 years after this figure. So basically what they did was they took this figure, if you look, the 2008 figure, and they simply added ball-jointed elbows and redesigned the arms. But the arms are so long and gangly looking. It honestly, it looks terrible. It looks terrible. So after years and years and years of, hits and misses, I just said, screw it. I'm tired of it. I'm going to make a custom. And this is what I made. Now, for now, I'm completely content with it. I shaved down the more scrunchy bits of the elbows. I replaced the instead of just cracking the shell or the torso, I kept the arms, the arm color here of the upper arms, and I just drilled and carefully drilled and drilled and drilled, in a way, and was able to insert both of these arms, even though if you look at it, they don't quite match either, but there's a lot more symmetry to it, obviously. So you've got a customized Anakin for episode 3 that's about as close as you can possibly get. And then I heard that Hasbro was going to be releasing an Anakin 3-pack. And when I saw the initial images, I was extraordinarily impressed. I was like, this looks okay. And then I got closer into the detail of it, and I noticed something. I noticed a bunch of things that were absolutely horrid about it. Okay, so first of all, Anakin in episode 3 is a much stockier version of Anakin. Why do I say that? Because in 2005, Hayden Christensen wanted to be in the Darth Vader suit for the Darth Vader scenes in Revenge of the Sith. So what did that mean? He had to put on a lot of muscle and a lot of bulk to bulk himself up, make himself look bigger, so that he could fill in the suit that was still padded. Now, as you will obviously notice with this figure, it's very, very slim. Okay, so, I mean, ignoring everything else that's terrible about it, ignoring the fact that instead of, continuing a nice black plastic into, tablatures here, they simply went with cloth and then glossed the cloth. Huh? Are you kidding me? Are you freaking kidding me? And then Hasbro, lazy as usual. If you look at the glove, it's one color and it's brown, and they just, to hell with it, they did it anyway. If you look at the boots, the color is off. It should be darker, and of course the trunks could be leave a little bit to be desired. The brown here is excellent, and actually it's the closest it's been to Anakin as far as his costume goes. And to give this figure some credit, it does a excellent job of getting this portion. That portion of the costume, because he doesn't have a lot of neck showing in the movie. The upper costume really rolls around his neck, but unfortunately Hasbro, per usual, stuck with one color brown for the entire thing and then just black. So I'm bewildered because I look at these other figures of Anakin, especially through the Evolution line. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, let me compare this to the episode 2 Anakin, because I want to make a point about this. Okay, so here's the original episode 2 Anakin that was included with Evolutions, in the Evolution 3-pack. So do you see how much smaller the figure is in terms of how skinny Anakin is as a Padawan, right? Wait, okay, that makes total sense. This is before the Clone Wars breakout, and he's obviously still a Padawan, so it's not like he's grown in. He's not like constantly going around fighting and building up muscle or whatever. And if I compare it to the recently released figure right here, they're the same size in terms of being skinny. And I'm trying to rack my head around how that happened. How could that happen? And I'll even show the current re-release in the vintage collection of the Episode 2 Anakin. Now, this figure was also based on that Evolutions figure, but what they did in the Black Series in 2013 was more solid tablatures, obviously hip articulation, and ankle roll, which was a massive improvement in my opinion. But notice, it still looks like Anakin as a skinny Padawan. Now, this Anakin looks like an Anakin who's a skinny Padawan. So I'm thinking to myself, all right, how is that possible? How could that happen? What's going on? Especially considering Hasbro really knocked it out of the park with their Count Dooku figure. So if we compare it to the Evolutions, see how the Evolutions one is more filled out? He's got broader shoulders and everything. Well, that was by design because Hayden Christensen put on like 15 to 20 pounds of muscle to fit into that Vader suit that he wears in Episode 3. So finally, I'm trying to figure out, okay, well, what happened? And unfortunately, it finally dawned on me. And I really, really, really regret buying this 3-pack because of one simple reason. This Anakin, or called Darth Vader, is not based on the look of Anakin in Revenge of the Sith. What happened in those intervening 20 years is Hayden obviously went back to his normal frame, which is thinner. And when he put the costume back on for those scenes in Ahsoka, what you were seeing was a thinner Anakin in an Episode 3 costume playing the role. So it looks off. It doesn't look as beefy or big. The hair color is blonde, which is inaccurate to begin with. It's more of a dark golden brown. But what also sucks about this figure is the gummy plastic, how plastic and just easy to, you can't put a lightsaber in his hands without it falling down because of the gummy plastic and all sorts of things. So this isn't really an Episode 3 Anakin. This is the Ahsoka Anakin. And when I realized that, I said to myself, oh my God, we're never going to get a proper Episode 3 Anakin. Would you like to know why? When Hasbro does a resculpt of a major character, they use that sculpt and milk it for all it's worth. Based on the history of this guy here, you can look. So 2005 to 2010, same sculpt for 5 years. Now, when they released the sculpt for the episode, let me see, the episode 6 or Episode 4 Vader, they had completely redesigned it. And from that, you got the different versions of the Darth Vader sculpt. So, for instance, if you look here, it's that same kind of sculpt as all of the others, but the only difference is they gave you a helmet with a kind of a translucent skull. So you can see the head, basically. So, like I said, Hasbro will never, ever, ever give us a definitive Episode 3 Anakin. This is a thing that has just like a thorn in my side for 2 decades. 2 decades I have been waiting for a definitive Episode 3 Anakin in that legacy scale, which is the 3.75 inch scale line. So when your Anakin is so thin, when the plastic is so gummy, let me pick this up, hold on. When you have this nicely colored tablatures, but the tunic itself becomes isn't matched up and is just glossified fabric. That's ridiculous. And of course, obviously, you know, the glove right there is still the same generic plastic that came with the figure. So, in my opinion, this is still going to be my definitive Episode 3 Anakin until otherwise. It's something I made myself, which gives it a little bit even more of a sentimentality to it. It's, again, the closest possible thing you can get to an accurate Episode 3 Anakin, with all of the the hip articulation. You get an ankle swivel, and you can move it back and forth, but that's about it. The head sculpt doesn't quite look like Hayden, but it looks good enough to pass based on the fact that, it's 2008, technology. So they were hand sculpting these. Again, I shortened the arms to make it way more aesthetically accurate. So if you can compare the two, if you notice, these arms are a lot longer than these arms compared to the body. So it looks more natural. But this is a grand disappointment. And, screw you, Hasbro. I've been a very loyal customer for so many years. And you take pictures of this, in the before it's released, and it looks like this glove is painted black. It looks like these boots are, nice and black. And I reluctantly look at the leather tabs, and I kind of said, all right, maybe I can, customize around the figure. But none of the other plastic tabs, like these ones, are painted, the correct color that the tab is up here. So what improvement has been made? What improvement has been made? The only improvement is the face sculpt. That's the only thing that they managed to really nail. But everything else, proportionately, is completely incorrect. It's Hayden Christensen at age 40, 42, slimmed down, and basically looks like his episode 2 frame, wearing an episode 3 costume. Whereas if you look at the beefier version here, it's much more accurate. Much more accurate. And again, comparing it to the episode 2 Anakin in the that's the 2005, but this is the most recently released in the vintage collection. So it's basically the 3.75 inch Anakin from the Black Series that's kind of been updated with a little lighter paint job and things of that sort. But if you look, it matches. It matches with this. Does that honestly look like a broad-shouldered, big version of Anakin? I'm sure some of you will say yes. But if you were correct, then this glove should be bigger and longer. These arms should be bigger. The torso itself should be longer and more broad. But it's not. It's short and then really skinny, and then the legs themselves are bigger than previous releases also. So it's inaccurate in that sense too. Once again, this is not a good figure. This is a... Well, I should have known better. Honestly, I should have known better. It's my fault. I got suckered into thinking I was buying an episode 3 Anakin, not that garbage piece of crap Disney Plus show that I didn't even watch. I just watched clips of it. But I came to the conclusion that this was made smaller and thinner because it's Hayden in his later years where he hasn't put on the muscle and bulked up. Because like episode 3 Anakin here, he has bulked up in preparation for wearing the suit, which was also padded to make it look even bigger, to match up more continuity-wise with the look of David Prowse in the original trilogy. So do not buy this figure if you do not want a proper episode 3 Anakin. Buy it if you just want to buy it, and that's about it. But the problem is this is going to be the sculpt that is going to be used for the next several years in terms of episode 3 Anakin releases, and it needs some major modifications. Major modifications. The plastic itself is so gummy. This is the same kind of plastic that they've been using for the re-release in the vintage collection lines. It's very gummy, very easy to, manipulate, to the point where even, just the heat of my hand holding it will gummy out the figure's ability sometimes to hold a lightsaber. Most of the time, it won't be able to hold its own lightsaber, unlike the plastic used on this figure and this figure and all the figures previous. That's my biggest gripe, is that we're never going to get a proper episode 3 Anakin. And it's a shame. But, these are first world problems. I'm just kind of venting because I've waited forever, and just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in with this. I said, all right, I don't necessarily want to, but this looks like a great opportunity to get an episode 3 Anakin. Nope, this is not This is not an episode 3 Anakin. This is the Ahsoka show Anakin. Period. This has been the Sentinel ranting, who has waited over 2 decades for a proper episode 3 Anakin, and I realize I will never ever get it. And I accept it at this point. All right. Good night. God bless, and have a wonderful day.